doth your caps, ladies and gentlemen, as tonight is the big night in the Real Life Podcast calendar. You join me at a completely nondescript theatre space for a night of well-mannered frivolity, celebrating the very best of the year's films, where we will be taking a look at the year gone by in cinema. These are the BSHWAs. The Bajorias should have won awards. There seems to be some interesting versions of that acronym over the years, and most of them are my fault, so whoops. But tonight we have a whole bunch of categories to go through. It promises to be a very exciting affair indeed, and don't worry, as in traditional award show style, this will have a runtime of no longer than 9 hours. Just before we get started, I'm on the red carpet, and we're about to interview some of the people who may be receiving awards tonight. So let's go and find some very excited celebrities. Oh, here we have Adrian Brody, star of The Brutalist. Mr. Brody, good evening. How are you feeling tonight?
Well, it's a great privilege to be here. I've always talked highly of these, the Bush, these awards. And we made a movie that's really a reflection of art itself. I could talk to you about that, but to be honest, I think it would be better if I told you my entire life story so far. So when I was born,
no, Adrian, that's plenty, thank you.
Aside,
Timothy, Mr. Chalamet, how are you? So great to have you here. Excited for the BSHWAs?
Non, je ne veux pas vraiment être ici.
Why are you speaking French? I know you can, but we are in Britain.
Non, je vais vers mon agent. Je ne sens même pas qui tu es.
Timothy, I don't... What are you saying?
Non, je sors d'ici. Non.
Mr. Villeneuve, hi there. Don Bajoria, how are you?
Well, thank you. Who did you say you were?
Don Bajoria, the host of the... Never mind. I just spoke with your lead actor, actually. He wasn't very helpful.
Timothée? Why was he difficult?
Well, he elected to speak French, but I don't know any.
Yes, he does that.
Well, perhaps if I'd been more respectful and called him Lisan al-Gaib, then... Denise, what the fuck are you doing? Where's that coming from?
You see, my mom really believed in me as a kid, and I don't think I'd be where I am now without all of her wisdom and might and love and passion and heart and courage.
Mr. Brody, I did ask you to stop.
Wisdom and love and heart and courage and passion.
Well, if it isn't Isabella Rossellini, congratulations for your fantastic performance in Conclave and in La Chimera as well. It's both marvellous films, aren't they?
You know, my mother was a brilliant woman. Let me go into excessive detail on everything she ever did. She picked me up one time and she said to me in her imitable calm voice,
Ray Fiennes, you seem pleasant and normal. How are you?
I am, but I don't know who you are, so don't talk to me.
Okay, yeah. Right, well, we're just about out of time with the interview. Is that Alan Bennett? Alan!
Oh, yes. Well, hello, Dom, my esteemed colleague.
How come you're...
Dressed in burgundy, yes, I know. It's a comforting colour, one I find normally melts me into my studious surroundings, proving to be a mouldable shade, which people don't usually take notice of. But I do fear tonight I've gotten rather too close to resembling the carpet. Earlier I had Zoe Saldana walk atop me because she wasn't looking where she was going.
Why are you here, Alan? You aren't nominated for anything.
Well, that's a very aggressive line of questioning, Mr. Bajoria. I don't quite know what gives you the right to take such a crass tone with me, when all I've done is attend what is otherwise a completely made-up event where you talk to yourself. You've got no friends, Dom. You'll have to admit that it's quite upsetting watching your slow descent into madness. Anyway, I very much enjoyed Conclave. I'll catch you after the ceremony and we can bitch about all the ugly things people decided to wear. I find my eye for aesthetic criticism has become something of an invaluable skill over the years.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Alan. Well, I think that's just about all we have time for with the interviews, because I slowly backed away from Mr. Brody after about 45 minutes and then shook hands with Cynthia Erivo, and now my fingers are cut up so badly I can't hold a microphone. So let's get into the awards. Right, that's enough of all that nonsense. We start our show tonight with the award for Best Cinematography. As ever, the way this will work is that I will talk through the Oscar nominations first and my prediction for what they will go for before revealing my nominations or picks for where the award actually should go. Also worth noting that all awards are essentially ridiculous and this is a subjective medium, so what the hell is this even for? Also, just very quickly before we start, it has emerged that some Academy voters deliberately didn't watch Dune Part 2 because they didn't like the first one. They didn't vote for Ralph Fiennes because he's won before, even though he hasn't, and they voted for Adrian Brody instead, who has won in 2003. And some people have avoided The Brutalist because of its runtime. And to those people I say this: you are part of the most prestigious collective of film viewers on planet Earth. Do your job and watch the films. If we're going to do these awards, let's do them properly. Do not start half-arsing things because people will notice. And had I known this before I'd done my Oscar predictions, things might have been a little bit different. But anyway, cinematography. The Oscar nominations are The Brutalists, Lol Crawley, Dune Part 2, Greg Fraser, Emilia Perez by Paul Guilherme, Maria by Ed Lachman, and Nosferatu by Jarin Blaschke. Now, we're going to get to the elephant in the room in terms of the great problem with this year's Oscars a little bit later on, but as far as this category goes, I would have thought the Oscars will go for The Brutalist. I think whatever reservations you have about that film, you can't deny it is a beautifully constructive sequence of images. The Academy seem to be really enamoured with The Brutalist, and I think that's where they're going to go. I do think it's beautifully shot, but actually I think much of the strength in The Brutalist was in its editing. The way these beautiful shots are sequenced together makes the film so much more impactful, and I think that really helps. The scene of the celebrations where Guy Pearce is talking to Mr. Brody out in the field is great, because the cut from one side of the conversation, which shows the rolling hills and free space, and then cuts back to the other side of the conversation in which we see the entire family standing next to them and watching them. That is one of the greatest cuts in a film that I've seen in a very long time within a single scene. I'd be very surprised if the Academy weren't championing Brady Corbet in this film to high heaven, and to be honest, that's fair enough. It's quite a good Oscar leading choice, and there have been far more offensive things leading the way before, like we've seen in another sense with these Oscars. So that's where I think the Oscars are going to go, but the Bushworth for this year's cinematography has 5 films leading the way for it, and they are Greg Fraser for Dune Part 2, Jarin Blaschke for Nosferatu, Sharon Mayer for Monkey Man, Stephanie Fontaine for Conclave, and Quinn Hester for Hundreds of Beavers. I find this category very difficult indeed. In all honesty, in terms of technical brilliance, creating the most beautiful images, Nosferatu was probably the best looking film of the year. It is incredibly visually arresting and is full of delicious frames that look like a painting and set the mood very, very well indeed. But I have to be honest, because other films for me managed to use their cinematography to enhance the actual narrative rather than the setting in the scene and creating the world, which Nosferatu does brilliantly, and there are standout frames from it which speak to the narrative and the themes, but I have to be honest and say that it wasn't quite my favourite. Monkey Man was, for me, this year's John Wick. A story told through heart-pounding fisticuffs at Mac-fuck for so much of the film, but its visual beauty has to be recognised because I thought it looked utterly gorgeous. It captured so many of the different elements of India and made them appear distinct and connected in every sequence. The fights themselves were just perfect, and the visuals really fed into its narrative. Hundreds of Beavers might sound like a weird inclusion for cinematography, but the way this film is constructed visually is one of the things that makes it endlessly entertaining. On a budget of $150,000, it managed to use its limitations as an advantage to itself by turning essentially a live presentation of a comic book slapstick into 108 minutes of endlessly fascinating, surrealist joy. Dune Part 2 speaks for itself. I mean, it is visually inexplainable. I mean, I adore everything about how it looks, every scene, the Colosseum, the desert, the sandworms, the ships, the courtrooms. This is big budget done as good as it can be, and it deserves much recognition for that. And Conclave is an utter delight. There are shots in that which made my jaw drop, and it's wonderfully meticulous in the sense of the blocking and the framing of every single scene. The scene with the umbrellas walking across the courtyard is just superb. I do also want to give a shout out in this category to Alien Romulus, because whatever the issues with that film, the way it looks was absolutely not one of them. It did darkness perfectly and it looked brilliant, but not nominated. So given that this is one of the hardest categories, and I could very easily have thrown in Vengeance Most Foul here, I've mentioned before that Curse of the Were-Rabbit should have won a cinematography Oscar, but I'm going to go with Hundreds of Beavers for doing something innovative, something courageous, and showing people you don't need to make everything shiny and gorgeous for it to feel like a perfect fit. It's all well and good having a couple $100 million to make your film look shiny and beautiful, but try and make it look engaging and keeping everything enjoyable on 0.075 of that budget. It is clever, it's hilarious, it's a genuine delight, and it deserves everyone's love, so the BSHWA for cinematography goes to Hundreds of Beavers. On to original screenplay now. Here are the Oscar nominees for this category. We have Anora, written by Sean Baker, The Brutalist, written by Brady Corbet and Mona Fastvold, A Real Pain, written by Jesse Eisenberg, September 5, written by Moritz Binder, Tim Feldbaum, and co-written by Alex David, and The Substance, written by Carolee Fajot. These are a decent set of nominees, in all fairness. I think this is probably heading in the direction of A Real Pain, if I was going to have to predict it. I think it's probably the sharpest piece of writing on that list, and it very much feels like an American fiction sort of vibe, where it's clever and incisive, and that's what gets it the win. And in all honesty, that would feel like a really worthy winner, because the script is fantastically done, and although some of it is a little bit full-on in terms of not hiding things, the dinner table scene is one of the best written scenes in a film for many, many years. So that's where I think the Oscars are going to go. Here's how the BSHWAs line up for original screenplay. We have Alice Vorvacher for La Chimera, Mark Burton for Wallace and Gromit, Vengeance Most Foul, Jesse Eisenberg for A Real Pain, Sean Baker for Anora, and Gabriel Sherman for The Apprentice. All of these have such great elements to them. La Chimera strikes such a great balance between the surreal and the heartfelt, which is not easy to do, and worth saying that La Chimera had its UK and US cinema release this year, or 2024, so hence why I'm including it in these lists. But I adored that film. I just thought it was such a sweet tone to strike that you worry at the start it's going to be ridiculous, and then it just so isn't. Wallace and Gromit is just endlessly funny and entertaining. The Nun on a Pleasure Cruise line alone makes it deserve to be here. I just love it. It's so damn funny. Anora is such a sweet story, taking us on one of the best solely contained journeys of the year inside its film. I found it to be endlessly charming, and I really like the dynamics that we see play out, which all comes down to the writing. It is really well constructed. I've spoken about A Real Pain already, and I'd be very happy to see it win at the Oscars because it's brilliant, but the winner of the BSHWA this time around is Gabriel Sherman's The Apprentice. I cannot fathom how scary this film must have been to make, met with such horrible backlash for no reason other than some people are so blind they can't see that the man currently occupying the White House is nothing other than a disgusting waste of human being who has done and is doing untold damage to the world, and not just through policy but through attitude changes. I think despite the fact that it could only go off legal precedent, i.e. everything in the film is at some point being proven in a court of law, hence Trump and his cronies couldn't sue it, which means that Trump actually gets off lightly in the film, it still manages to get across the nature of the man and explains why he became what we know him to be today. Despite his disgusting existence, there is a person there, and understanding what it is that underpins his methodologies by looking at him as a person is a really important and worthwhile exercise. And I've got to be honest, I thought all of the dialogue was expertly done. I thought it gave superb and incisive commentary onto how surface level so much of this stuff is, and also it managed to, in the style of any story, give its main character an arc to follow. In this case, a disgusting and morally repugnant arc, but an arc nonetheless. It didn't caricature Trump, it sort of captured his tone and his intonation and then made it into a story worth following. If people can't look at this film, or just anything this man has ever said or done, and not feel like it is our moral duty to be outraged at his popularity, then there can be no winning for society. This is the most important original thing written this year by a long way, and that is why it wins the BSHWA. So the BSHWA for original screenplay goes to Gabriel Sherman for The Apprentice. Okay, on to adapted screenplay, and the Oscars line up like this. A Complete Unknown by James Mangold and Jay Cox, Conclave by Peter Straughan, Emilia Perez by Jacques Audiard, Nickel Boys by Ramel Ross and Jocelyn Barnes, and Sing Sing by Clint Bentley, Greg Quidar, story by Clint Bentley, Greg Quidar, Clarence Macklin, John Devine G. Whitfield. Now, I must confess that I haven't yet been able to see Sing Sing or Nickel Boys, but I'm very keen to because I think Colman Domingo is a superb actor, and both stories sound really intriguing and fascinating, and they've been on the list for a while, but I haven't got around to them yet, so apologies, but I haven't seen them. But I'm really optimistic that the Oscars and the BSHWAs are actually going to line up this year because, lads, come on. It's Peter Straughan, Conclave, and we all know it has to be. No, there's not even going to do any BSHWA nominations for this because that's pointless. This just wins. Conclave is the perfect source material to adapt. The Robert Harris book is absolutely fantastic, and as a politics nerd, the subject matter is endlessly fascinating to me and allows for some of the best character dynamics you've seen in a long time. I could actually watch it again and again and again. I was fortunate enough to be in a position to speak to Peter Straughan at an event recently, given he's a Gateshead lad, born and bred. He made an appearance as I went back to Newcastle for a weekend, and he is such an eloquent writer. He understands everything about what writing is, how it should work, and that's why he's written some of the great adaptations there have been. Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy is one of the greatest films ever made, and his script is a huge part of the reason why. Wolf Hall is just undeniably gorgeous, let's ignore the snowman, as he said to me. But this one isn't even a competition. He was so kind, he was a joy to speak to, and it gave me a lot of very valuable advice on writing, and I shall be stealing from him again in the future. And then the film is just glorious, and it's so fun to watch. This could just be loads of old men talking in a room, because that's what the book is, but the book and the screenplay have both been turned into something far more exciting and sort of gossip girly, and you just love to watch it play out in that kind of setting. So, obviously, without question, the BSHWA for adapted screenplay goes to Peter Straughan and Conclave. We now reach original score, and the Oscars nominees are as follows. We have The Brutalist by Daniel Blumberg, we have Conclave by Volker Bertelmann, we have Emilia Perez by Clément Ducol and Camille, we have Wicked by John Powell and Stephen Schwartz, and we have The Wild Robot by Chris Bowers. It's at this point I turn from excessive praise of this year's greats to address the elephant in the room, and the elephant in the room is this. What the actual fuck is Emilia Perez doing anywhere in these awards? It isn't a good film. It isn't even an okay film. It is an absolutely terrible mess, which is offensive and stupid and pretentious and French and ridiculous. It wastes so many spaces at these Oscars, and seeing it win anything actively hurts. How is it possible for a musical without a single good song in it to earn 3 separate Oscar nominations for music, 1 for score and 2 for original songs? How is that possible? The thing people always say when they complain about musicals, particularly in movies, is, oh, well, they sing everything, that's so stupid. To which the argument is normally, go look betwixt your sofa cushions that you might find some brain cells, you idiot. It's a musical. That's what happens. It's a different art form. You're watching a musical, suck it up. However, Emilia Perez manages to somehow break that entire fucking concept by singing things that shouldn't ever be sung. The vaginoplasty song has no excuse to exist. When people sing things in films, it's normally about how they feel or the emotions of their situation or love or loss or worry or guilt or anything engaging, anything in between. But that's why I actually quite enjoyed Joker 2, because I thought the songs meant things in relation to the story and those characters. And if they were fantasies, which is very Todd Phillips, so the song ends and, oh, it didn't actually happen, they actually affected the story by giving us insight into the characters and their dynamic. The songs in Emilia Perez are there just so it can call itself a musical. None of them mean a thing, they're all cringy as hell, and this film is the exact reason that Cannes might be the stupidest film festival on planet Earth. Because shit like this gets lauded to high heaven. It doesn't have a single ounce of trans lived experience in it. It doesn't do trans issues any justice. The director himself has admitted having done no research on Mexico or its setting or the ideas. The main actress, Sofia Carla Gascon, has said incredibly problematic things in the not so distant past and faced no repercussions. The film looks ugly as shit because it's edited by someone who appears to be using a spoon. All the performances, because of the source material, are hammed up so much that they accompany cheese in a sandwich. They are all ridiculous. This is an ignorant film, which has no right being near any of the awards, and it strikes of just how far all the Academy still are from understanding marginalised voices, because in a year that maybe the Academy could try and piss off Trump, which I'm all for in every way, maybe champion the film that shows how despicable he is, maybe go and find a film made by Mexicans, maybe find a story about transgender people that actually engage with transgender people because it understands them properly. This film actively disgusts me, and I cannot believe so many people in the industry are as tone deaf to it as they have been. It's a mess, and if it weren't for Francis Ford Coppola accidentally deciding to drop the worst film that anyone has ever made ever, this would have taken the crown for the worst film of the year by about 4 million miles. My Letterboxd review for it gives it 1 star and reads, "This is absolutely terrible," and I've gone kind on it. Put that on the poster. Anyway, Now that I've dealt with that nonsense, let's get back to being positive about great things that happened this year in film. So, the BSHWAs for score are Dune 2 by Hans Zimmer, Volker Bertelmann, Conclave, Chris Bowers for The Wild Robot, Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross for Challengers, Daniel Blumberg for The Brutalist, and Chris Ryan for Hundreds of Beavers. Now, my prediction in terms of where the Oscars are going to go is, I think there's a strong chance that it could be Wicked, but it's either going to be the Wicked soundtrack or the Brutalist soundtrack, and one of the two. I think it's more likely to be the Brutalist one, but I think they could go a little bit left field. In terms of where I'm going, I think my choice is completely inarguable. Now, whilst all of these fit the films that they're in wonderfully, and they add the extra element to them, but film scores are supposed to do, nothing comes close this year to Dune Part 2 by Hans Zimmer. This is why having Emilia Perez is again stupid, because it isn't nominated for an Oscar, the Dune 2 score. It's the most iconic score of the year. It's the one that I can remember most clearly. It's also just kick-ass and dramatic as hell, matches the tone of the film perfectly, and continues that innovative idea that Hans Zimmer picked on from the first one. There was never any debate in my head for this category. Although the Conclave score really adds an extra element of unrest and secrecy and unsettling murmurs spreading about the place, Dune 2 is so far ahead of everything else this year. I cannot believe it hasn't even been nominated. I talked through it with Michael on our episode on Dune and spoke about how it takes me back to scores that you could sing. I think it will remain iconic for a very long time. I think it's a divine piece of musical experimentation that made the experience feel so perfect. That music is the film, absolutely contained within the score. It took the brilliance of the first score and I think made it even better, and it easily walks away with the BSHWA. So, Hans, don't worry, big guy. I ain't forgotten about you. So, on to the people categories, and we have supporting actress for our first one, and the Oscar nominees are as follows. We have Monica Barbaro for A Complete Unknown, Ariana Grande for Wicked, Felicity Jones in The Brutalist, Isabella Rossellini in Conclave, and Zoe Saldana in that one. Again, this is another really tricky category to call. The BAFTAs were obviously moronic and went with Zoe Saldana, and that hurt to watch because what the fuck. I'm increasingly worried that the Oscars are going to do the same. If there's any justice, it'll be Rossellini or Jones who take the award home, but I'm feeling like it won't be. There'll be some television-directed shouting from me when they pick Zoe Saldana. It's at this point I should also say that I haven't actually seen A Complete Unknown yet. I know, that's poor. I really should get around to seeing it because I'm told that the performances are great and the music's really good fun. But here are the BSHWA nominees in a very close-run thing. So, Isabella Rossellini in Conclave, Rebecca Ferguson in Dune 2, Felicity Jones in The Brutalist, Maria Bakalova in The Apprentice, and Alba Rohrwacher in La Chimera. Maria Bakalova does such a wonderful job in making sure her character doesn't get lost in the mire of being swept away by the businessman. She nails every scene and is a real credit to the film's power, because as an audience member witnessing this horrible twat, you immediately hope she manages to escape any harm, which, horribly and disturbingly, she doesn't. Alba Rohrwacher really drew me in La Chimera. She was so well judged and a bit evil, I kind of just really loved the occasion it gave. Also, I didn't want Isabella Rossellini to be nominated twice, because, you know, we all know she's brilliant, but there we are. Alba was just really cool and suave and fun, and that really took my fancy. But, speaking of Rossellini, in Conclave, she's just brilliant. It's such a great character, and she delivers that cutting speech with such presence and authority. It really is a fist-pumping moment. She is her usual powerhouse self, and she adds a lot of dynamism to that film. She's great. Felicity Jones pretty much steals the show in The Brutalist. She's a fierce performer, and I think she just nails everything here. She kind of feels like the film's emotional heart to me, and it absolutely is the performance of her lifetime. I personally think she should win the Oscar out of these nominations. She's really diverse in this. She has to be stoic and instructive, but also vulnerable in a really interesting way. It's a great performance. The thing about Rebecca Ferguson is that she's always just amazing all the time, but she turns evil in this one. Like, she's really spiky, and I think it was a performance that went under the radar broadly. She's absolutely fantastic. I think she's one of the great actors at the minute, and this shows exactly why. This category is really tricky, but when I boil it down to my favourite performance of the year, the BSHWA for supporting actress goes to Rebecca Ferguson. I know this is the supporting actress category, but she's present for so much of the film. Rossellini is gold standard acting in Conclave, and if she won the Oscar, I'd be very happy indeed, and she nearly won it here. It was between her and Rebecca Ferguson, but I think this time I'm going to go with the performance that I just felt really impacted by. And I think a lot of Rossellini's brilliance is to do with the nature of her character. The circumstances created by the film really let that moment of hers burst through everything in a wonderful way. And that also is down to her, but I think Rebecca Ferguson has a harder job in the sense that it was a far bigger performance, physically and lengthwise, and she nailed every single second. So the Bushwa for supporting actress goes to Rebecca Ferguson for Dune Part 2. So on we come to what I think is the hardest category to call this time out. It's a belter. The Oscar nominations for supporting actor are Yura Borisov for Honora, Kieran Culkin in A Real Pain, Edward Norton in A Complete Unknown, Guy Pearce in The Brutalist, and Jeremy Strong in The Apprentice. These are all very good nominees, and to be honest, any of them winning feels like a good move, despite the fact that I haven't seen A Complete Unknown. But I think we can all tell that Kieran Culkin's going to be the one who picks up the award, and quite bloody fair, because that is a really great performance of range and intricacy, and despite how rude he can be, you really do like him a lot. I think that's where the Oscars are going to go, but it's a really stacked category. And as far as the Bushwa goes, I've done the same thing as last year and cheated on this category massively. There is 8 nominees. Whoops. And I didn't even have room for Guy Pearce, who's amazing. So the Bushwa nominees for supporting actor are Adam Pearson in A Different Man, Jeremy Strong in The Apprentice, Vincenzo Nimolato in La Chimera, Sergio Castellito in Conclave, Denzel Washington in Gladiator 2, Joseph Quinn in Gladiator 2, Jesse Plemons in Civil War, and Kieran Culkin in A Real Pain. Okay, so the absence of Adam Pearson nominations everywhere is really baffling to me when his charisma literally burst out of the screen in A Different Man. It's palpable and he does such a brilliant job. The intonation of his lines feels so natural and he's such a great, fun presence to watch. I'm really disappointed not to see him pop up in what was an important film with obviously a subject matter he knew very well, and he did a beautiful job in bringing that to life on the screen. Jeremy Strong is such a wicked figure in The Apprentice. I really like his shift from malevolence to resentment, and as usual, he just judges everything with pinpoint accuracy and precision, and he's an absolute master of subtlety. I'd be very happy to see him win the Oscar, even though I don't think he will. Vincenzo Nimolato was just really good fun, because he was kind of boyish and juvenile, but really sweet and had such great rapport with everyone that it almost felt like he was the heartbeat of the film sometimes in La Chimera. He was completely unknown to me, but I obviously loved getting to know him in that. He's just really, really engaging. I could have picked any number of people from Conclave because the entire cast is legendary. Stanley Tucci, John Lithgow, Carlos Diaz and Lucian Msamati all very nearly got in, but when I think about it, none of them were as diabolically fabulous as Sergio Castellito, whose monstrous vape hit made the entire thing feel so much more entertaining. He's a reactionary character. He's someone who requires full force behind his performance, and that is absolutely what it was given. It's a real whirlwind. Denzel, the great. Why he isn't in the Oscars list, I don't know. Oh, he doesn't need it. Bitch, please, the man's a god, and he's just done more god things. All the stuff about playing with his clothing, rearranging it as he rearranges the political order, his presence, his delivery, his calmness. He's just the king. Just because someone's been nominated a bunch of times doesn't mean you don't nominate them again, and this man's just a hero. On the topic of Gladiator 2... again, I could have nominated so many people. Tim McInerney, Pedro Pascal, Fred Hetchinger, but Joseph Quinn does such a great job as Gator. It really could be a stupid caricature performance with all the makeup and the paleness. Ridley Scott even mentioning Beavis and Butthead as inspiration for him and Caracalla, but he nails it. He finds the perfect tone and balance to everything, and he just kills his role. He's so fun to watch. You believe him and you want to believe him. I just loved seeing him on screen, particularly acting with Denzel. I thought they were a great pair together. Jesse Plemons is in Civil War for about 10 minutes, and that's a film I really enjoyed, even if it did do the inevitable Alex Garland thing of people having to say stupid expositional cliche things out loud. And he's the best thing about it. I love that his character is literally wearing rose-tinted glasses, but he is so scary, so genuinely threatening. He steals the show. He is a properly good actor, one of the best alive. If your film has him in it, it's going to be good. That is the most I've feared a character in a long, long time, and he really stole the show for me in that. What a terrifyingly good actor. And we've mentioned Kieran Culkin, but he is just really engaging. He's unpredictable, but none of it feels tacky. It all feels genuine and earned, and he is such a great presence on screen, and being the lost soul, but someone who's also brash and loud. It's a brilliant performance. It's career-defining, and he is so brilliant. But Because I've got loads of nominees, I'm going to have to cheat on the actual giving of the award again and give this category 2 winners. I know, it's not fair, but as I said before, these are my awards, so fuck you. I'm going to give the BSHWA to Denzel Washington and to Jesse Plemons. I was captivated more by them than anyone else, and I really can't split between them, despite the fact that their performances are so different to each other. They are two titans of the game doing titan things. Stupendous. Now we on to the big ones. Leading actress. The Oscar nominations look like this. Cynthia Erivo in Wicked, Carla Sofia Gascon in That Thing, Mikey Madison in Anora, Demi Moore in The Substance, and Fernanda Torres in I'm Still Here. These feel kind of safe and boring. I've talked about Carla Gascon and why that's a hard nope, but it's very good to have a trans actress on the list, just a real shame what it's for, because that film is shit. If you'd asked me a few weeks ago what would happen here, then I would have said Demi Moore was locked in, but I'm starting to think otherwise. I think there's going to be a shift here to Mikey Madison, and honestly, that's so very fair. Demi Moore is great in The Substance. That's an important role. Difficult to land, and I think she gets it right. It's fantastic to watch, but for me, there's more for Mikey Madison to do in Anora, and that might be what gets her the win. So here are the BSHWA nominations. Mikey Madison in Anora, Sydney Sweeney in Immaculate, Anna Kendrick in Woman of the Hour, Zendaya in Challengers, and Demi Moore in The Substance. Mikey Madison is really engaging. She looks like she's having the time of her life, and you can't help but have fun with the story, and she is absolutely the heart of it. It's full of little things, small decisions that make a big difference, and that role carries a lot of responsibility that she manages very well indeed. People seem to have forgotten about Immaculate, perhaps because the first 50 minutes of it is so fucking boring, but there can be no denying, particularly with that ending sequence, that Sydney Sweeney is a proper good actor, because she owns that film outright. She has to dig so deep for what happens in the latter half of the film, and she hits right there where the feels are. I can't even remember who else was in it, but again, forgotten by the academies, because who cares about horror? Am I right or am I right? Stupid academies. Anna Kendrick is on my list because she manages to direct a film and star in it, and neither of the two elements suffered for it. I was really impressed by Woman of the Hour. I thought she nailed the direction of loads of it, but her performance was also standout. I don't really know why she isn't being considered more heavily. Well, I do know. It's because there's no room for that. Anyway, that stupid film keeps taking up space. Don't sleep on Anna Kendrick in this, because she is really damn good. Challengers doesn't work without Tashi being the character that she is, and I don't have loads more to say other than I just totally believed Zendaya. I just really got on with everything she was doing, and even though she is the villain of the film with Patrick, and you cannot convince me otherwise, Art gets absolutely shafted, and I won't have any of this "he started it" nonsense. Don't be ridiculous. But Zendaya proved just how much of a presence she is, and she has the most unnerving stare of like anyone in film. She makes that film as poppy and intriguing as it is, and she does a really, really great job with it. Demi Moore is really good in The Substance, there's no doubt about that, and it is actually a case of the Oscars having more of an ear to the pulse than we actually thought, because they have included The Substance in stuff this time out, which they might not normally do. I enjoyed that film and many elements of it, but it was way too overt and head-beating. If you want to watch a feminist body horror that doesn't treat you as if you don't have any brain cells, watch The Descent by Holly Lawrence and Evans, which is 16 minutes long and doesn't set up loads of cool stuff and ideas before smashing your head into the mirror as hard as Margaret Qualley did. That feels like a metaphor for some of the film, to be honest, but Demi Moore does a brilliant job, and you believe everything she does, and she gets the weird just right. But I think I'm going to be lining up with the Oscars here. Across the whole film, the one that I believed in and invested in the most was definitely Mikey Madison in Anora, and that's where the BSHWA goes. So let's just hope the Academy don't get it horrendously wrong on the night, and we can have a moment of unity. Leading actor then, and the Oscar nominations look like this. Adrian Brody in The Brutalist, Timothée Chalamet in A Complete Unknown, Coleman Domingo in Sing Sing, Ralph Fiennes in Conclave, and Sebastian Stan in The Apprentice. Honestly, this is a great list. I haven't managed to catch A Complete Unknown or Sing Sing yet, as I've mentioned, but I'm starting to feel like this might be Lil Timmy Tim's time. I know the BAFTAs went with Adrian Brody, but I don't think the Academy will. I really need to watch him because I've heard he is brilliant, and I think they might actually finally land a Oscar at the feet of Timothée Chalamet. So, here come the BSHWAs. Ralph Fiennes in Conclave, Josh O'Connor in La Chimera, Sebastian Stan in The Apprentice, and Sebastian Stan in A Different Man. Dev Patel in Monkey Man, Jesse Eisenberg in A Real Pain, and Ben Whitehead in Wallace and Gromit, Vengeance Most Foul. Side note, I want to give it to Mark Gatiss for Motive in the Queue, but that doesn't count because it was the filming of a play at the National Theatre, not an actual film, so still. But that's the best acting of the year. Anyway, Josh O'Connor plays someone who's very annoyed and confused, very, very well. But he's Josh O'Connor, so obviously he does. He's an eternally brilliant actor. La Chimera builds around his character coming to terms with certain ideas and a certain lifestyle, and watching his character shift was really, really rewarding. It's a fantastic and subtle performance, and I've always got time for that, and he does carry the film, so well done, that man. Sebastian Stan is here twice, and I know I mentioned the Isabella Rossellini thing, but it's because I can't decide which performance is better this time. He embodies everything he needs to perfectly in both films without feeling like a caricature or an actor puts on their hair and makeup and does the thing. The world is finally realising how brilliant he is, and honestly, in quite a few years, he may well have won easily outright for The Apprentice. I think he nails the tone of The Apprentice and of the world's most imitated man, and he makes him a character, not an impression. That's really, really hard when someone has parodied as Trump, and I think Mr. Stan's a bit of a genius. As for A Different Man, that's a sensitive performance, that's a wise performance, and he does give credence to everything the film is trying to get from him. And they're both great bits of work. Dev Patel is the king we all need, and fuck you, all the awards for not giving him a sniff, because I very, very much think that, like Anna Kendrick, he directed the fuck out of and starred in a kick-ass film. I absolutely adored Monkey Man. Like, I really loved it, and in any other year it would be my favourite film by a very long way indeed. You know I love John Wick, and this felt like the kind of vibe. My heart was just so happy and won over the whole way through. Maybe it spoke to my Indian blood, but I was just so giddy watching it, I didn't want it to end. Also, when he puts on the monkey mask, it's one of the most badass things I've ever seen. It got me so hyped up, it's like so fast. He also has such great moments of calm and quiet, and I think we can all agree that this man is everything great about people. As far as A Real Pain goes, it does need Jesse Eisenberg to hold it up. He just fits perfectly, and he didn't actually write that role for himself, with him playing it in mind, which removes that get out of jail free element of it. He actually wanted the other part, but then he adapted to do this, and he is really engaging. I identified so much with him in this, and I could watch him endlessly. As we all know, Jesse Eisenberg is really very good when he gets the right part, and this is another example of it. Ben Whitehead absolutely was Peter Salas in Wallace and Gromit. I genuinely couldn't believe what I was hearing. It staggered me. It's not just an impersonation. He fully embodies the voice in such a way that you wouldn't even be able to notice the change. And to come up against an institution like Wallace is Joe's such a difficult challenge, and then he tackles it like that. It is truly astonishing, and he's gone too far under the radar because that is a brilliant performance. But can there be a finer performance this year than Ralph Fiennes? The BSHWA is heading to him, and the Oscars need to open their eyes and give him that too, because it's about time. He doesn't put a foot wrong. He goes all over the place emotionally whilst being desperate to maintain order and reason and calm. He's very English without just being M from Bond. He has this perfect voice for cinema, and he uses it so effortlessly here. I couldn't take my eyes off Conclave, and his genius is very much a huge reason why. So give this man the Oscar he bloody deserves out of all this time. The BSHWA goes to Ralph Fiennes in Conclave for Best Actor. The penultimate award now, and if you are a filmmaker, this is the one you want to win. It's Best Director. The Oscar nominees are Sean Baker for Anora, Brady Corbet for The Brutalist, James Mangold for A Complete Unknown, Jacques Audiard for that one, and Carolee Fajot for The Substance. Now, it'll be Corbet, and there isn't a moment's hesitation about that for me. You just know that's what they're going to do because of the epic nature of The Brutalist. And in fairness, Brady Corbet does an excellent job directing it indeed. I really did like the film. I wouldn't say that I loved it, but there was loads of it that I really got on with, and I think it's a worthwhile story. As for me, the nominations for the Best Director BSHWA are Edward Berger for Conclave, Dev Patel for Monkey Man, Mike Cheslick for Hundreds of Beavers, Alice Vorvacher in La Chimera, and Denis Villeneuve for Dune Part 2. All of these are brilliant in their own right, and I very nearly went for all of them because they all do something very different, but I've got to be honest and say that for me, Mike Cheslick is taking home the BSHWA. Berger gives us intrigue, Patel gives us raw action, Vorvacher gives us exploration, and Villeneuve gives us artistic scale. But Cheslick gives us experimentation, humour, and joy. I love all of the films that these directors made, and I think they're all brilliant directors, and they have a place in my heart for many different reasons, but I just loved the way Hundreds of Beavers was put together so much, and it didn't once leave me wanting for anything. I'm so glad they did it, and I'm very, very proud indeed of Mike Cheslick. Let's let this man keep doing things like this, because I will be seated for all of it. If you haven't seen it, seek it out, because you will have one hell of a good time. It's abstract, it's unusual, it's warm, it's welcoming, it's hilarious. I want one of the beaver costumes. It's a delight. So the best director BSHWA goes to Mike Cheslick for Hundreds of Beavers. And now, the big one itself, Best Picture. Here's how the Oscars line up. Anora, The Brutalist, A Complete Unknown, Conclave, Dune Part 2, Emilia Perez, I'm Still Here, Nickel Boys, The Substance, and Wicked. In my head, I don't think there's any doubt that they'll go with The Brutalist. I think it was Conclave here and The Brutalist there. And it is a really good film, and it wouldn't surprise me one jot. It would be nowhere near the bad choices of previous Oscars, that's for sure, and it wouldn't be Emilia Perez, so that's excellent. I'm going to rank my choices from 10 to 1, so you can find out what I think the film of the year is. Here we go. And these are obviously simultaneously what would be my picks for the 10 nominations for Best Film. Starting at number 10, Wallace and Gromit, Vengeance Most Foul. Don't at me, it was amazing. Number 9, A Real Pain. Number 8, The Brutalist. Number 7, Anora. Number 6, The Apprentice. Number 5, Dune Part 2. Number 4, Monkey Man. Number 3, La Chimera. Number 2, Hundreds of Beavers. And number 1 is Conclave. This time, one of the big ones pinched it. Hundreds of Beavers is just a delight, and in a year without Conclave, it would have been my favourite without question, but everything comes together for Conclave, and it just ends up working brilliantly in every department. Every actor is top-notch, the shots are gorgeous, the story is whip-sharp, and as a politics nerd, it's everything I could ask for. There's not one thing I don't like about it, apart from the fact that the sound has been taken away from the most impactful moment on Amazon Prime. When I watched it in the theatre, I genuinely felt like I'd been hit by a brick, but on Amazon the sound is gone, which is a stupid decision, but I just loved every second. The costumes, the look of it, the music, the tone, the pace, all of it. You can't convince me that any of it doesn't need to be there. I might go and watch it again right now, to be honest. But there we have it. Another year of film done and dusted, just in time for a new one to take its place. I hope you have enjoyed this episode, the final episode of Season 3 of the show. I'll hopefully be coming back in Season 4 with a new logo. And I do hope you liked the new intro music. These BSHWA episodes always take absolutely ages to get written and made, and I give myself such a stupidly hard job this time by doing all the interview stuff and the sting music in between. So any positive feedback or sharing of the episode would mean a great deal, because this takes a long time and I should be writing my dissertation right now, but never mind. I hope you had a wonderful time listening. Do let me know any of your thoughts on what should and shouldn't win this time out. I thought this hadn't been a great year for film, but looking back at my list of top 10, it ain't been too shabby. So watch this space for more podcasts to come very soon indeed, and I'll catch you again with more cinematic nonsense. Stay safe and bye!